there's all these little things that when you look at them, they're blessings. And it's so hard to tell someone who's just been widowed that there's blessings everywhere. But there are. You just have to sometimes look a little bit harder.
I'm Pam Lundell, and this is A Widow's Heart. God hears your voice. Hey, I'm Pam Lundell, host of A Widow's Heart, and it's been a joy to be here with you. Just a reminder, I'm a longtime broadcaster in Minneapolis, St. Paul at 98.5 KTIS. You can check out our website at myktis.com if you'd like. Psalm 5:3, I read about this in my devotions recently. Love it. In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning, I lay my requests before you and wait expectantly. There's something powerful about starting your day with your heart and mind fixed on Jesus, whether you wake up before the sun is up or when it's high in the sky, whether you wake up perky and cheerful or like me, most mornings, groggy and grumpy, you get to choose the first thing you'll do. Will you turn on the news, check your email, or scroll Instagram? Or will you tune your heart to God's voice? In Psalm 5, David declares with confidence that God hears his voice. You can have the same confidence. You can trust that whether you whisper or weep, or shout or praise, God hears you. Like an attentive parent, always listening for their children's voices, God is eagerly waiting for the sound of your voice. He loves it when his children call out to him. So follow David's lead today and speak to the Lord. Tell God what you need and wait expectantly for him to answer. This is episode 19 already. I cannot believe it. We've had so many incredible stories and incredible souls come through here. And today is no exception with my friend, Susan Spalding. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Pam. So good to be here.
Yes. And I am just amazed at, your life. You were an American Airlines flight attendant. I didn't know that for almost 20 years.
Yeah. Yep. I sure was. I followed in my mother's pump, so to speak. She was also a flight attendant back in the day.
I don't know how you're on your feet in those heels for so long. And you've lived overseas in many areas. You are a grief counselor because of the event in your life where you lost your husband. And that's the part that, we talk about. And I always say, widows, we can share detail and things that we probably wouldn't with other people. But I want to tell me just a little bit about yourself and what your life is like. And then we'll get into the story.
Well, that's a whole bag of worms, so to speak. But my life, I think when I truly think back at it, Pam, I think that God has sort of set me on track for doing what I'm doing now. As hard as that is to say, I really believe it to be true. Yes, I traveled a lot on my own, being a flight attendant with American Airlines, and traveled a lot with my family. And I was born in Mexico. So the foreign element was very comfortable to me. So being in different elements and having to adapt was just part of who I am. Mm-hmm. And my story started really when I met Steve. I mean, it's been going for so long, really, since I was born is my story. Yeah. But when I met Steve, he really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And those are the kinds of things that I try and remember today of being the person that he fell in love with, and not change to be someone that I'm not. And that's taken some time. It's taken a lot of work, yes, and a lot of faith. And one of the things that I lean into, Pam, is something from Proverbs that says, trust everything to the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Because things do happen in our life that we don't understand, but we have to keep the faith and move forward with that.
Those Bible verses, they get new meaning, don't they?
They do.
Over time. Like I've heard that ever since I was a little girl. It's like, okay, lean not on your own. But then, wow.
Yeah.
It just has a whole different meaning, a different light on it. That's for sure.
Yep.
So when did you meet Steve? I don't know how long you guys were married.
Yes. Well, we met in the mid '80s. I met him at a Ranger baseball game.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of those embarrassing moments where I was standing in line at the concession stand, and I saw this tall drink of water walk by. He was 6'8" and just full of life.
He was 6'8"?
Yes.
Oh, my
And I'm
goodness.
not exactly tiny. I'm 5'11" myself. So.
You are. That's right. You are tall. You're tall, and I've always thought of myself as tall too. But yes, we're both tall. Long drinks of water.
Yeah, right. But I actually turned around to check him out, and he caught me doing that. And as fate would have it, he was at the same restaurant after the game that I was with my brother and my girlfriends. He was at the same restaurant having a celebration for his birthday, and he sent over a round of margaritas. And so we started to talk, and one thing led to another, and we started to date, and we dated for about I want to say about 9 years before we decided to get married.
Okay.
And we were married, and soon after had our beautiful son, AJ. And he's been the love of my life ever since.
Oh, I know. And I know Susan Spalding, my guest on A Widow's Heart. And I have not met your son, but I've seen those incredible pictures from Hawaii.
Yes, yes.
where AJ lives. And what a blessing it is to have him in your life. And I know that your relationship is just so, so special.
It is special. And we are very close. I think the hardships that we've gone through have brought us closer. It's brought some challenges, too. And I think because of my loss by suicide, it has complicated a lot of things. But he's been my reason to move forward. And until I found my own reason, it seemed, AJ was only 13 when we lost Steve. Mm-hmm. And I had to be there for him. And I didn't want him to have the fear or the tribulations of being I don't know how to put that into words, but
Well, and you and I have talked a little bit in the past, too. Susan is just an integral part of Widowmite, the nonprofit that I was honored to be on the original board that kind of helped launch it, widowmite.org, if you'd like to check it out for more information. But your empathy and your love and your feeling for these widows is just so apparent. It really is. And it's just because we're kind of walking on the same journey. But now I've talked to many widows, and they've lost their husbands suddenly in accidents. Of course, John, my late husband, was accidental drug overdose after addiction. And I think you're the first widow that I'm talking to whose husband, and it's just, I don't like that word, but we're going to say it, who died by suicide.
Yes.
How did that affect you? Can you share part of your story?
Of course.
Because I know others are listening who are in the same situation.
Yes, and that is one of the primary reasons, besides just loving you to pieces, to say yes to coming and doing a podcast. I think it's so important for those left behind by suicide to know that they're not alone, because unlike other grief, it doesn't really matter how we got to this table. We're all sitting at the table for the same reason. Mm-hmm. But suicide has so many extra layers to it. And I also had a long time. It was long before I could say the word suicide without feeling just really awful inside. But it's the way we speak about it that can help change awareness to it. Mm-hmm. But suicide is challenging when you have a loss other than cancer or an accident or what have you, because there's the stigma that comes with it. And whether it's stigma from other people or stuff that we make up in our own heads about what people are thinking or judging us about, or our family
Isn't
about.
that a hidden one, too?
It really does.
We kind of sabotage ourselves.
We do.
Yeah.
And it's those stories, and actually being vulnerable to share the story of having lost by suicide. If it can help somebody, then that's why we do it, right? And those who are left behind by suicide sometimes feel that they're isolated because they can't share their story. Like when you go to a generic group, support group for loss, you're going around the circle and you're sharing why you lost or how you lost your husband. And then you hear all these terrible illnesses and this, that, or the other. And we forget that there is mental illness or there is depression or there's other factors, whether it's a side effect from medication or what have you. You sort of clam up because you feel that they're not going to understand how you feel, because you didn't have that kind of loss. They think they chose it when in fact they did that
is really, really a strong point.
It's
that you
profound,
just made.
really. It's because so many people think it's a choice, and it's not a choice. But by sharing that there's other people out there that are going through what you're going through and who understand, that's the most important thing. And many times it's not that we need advice. We just need a hand to hold, an ear to listen, and a heart to understand. And if you're in a group that doesn't have somebody who has had a loss by suicide, you may not feel like you're being heard or seen.
Susan Spalding is my guest on A Widow's Heart. And, grief, I would call you a grief expert is what we're going to call you. I mean, I feel sometimes when we get together and talk, and Susan and I are sitting across the table at a restaurant or something, I just kind of just bask in your aura.
Aww.
Because you are such a balm. And I've seen you work with so many widows that I'm just proud to call you a friend. And I know it might be hard, but if you want to share a little bit of your story and how you moved through the first minutes, hours, the days afterward, and how you finally, as in Widow Might, the four cornerstones: to live, to heal, to grow, and to thrive. I think, none of us think we're going to get to the thriving stage, but here we are, you and me.
Yes, exactly. Smiling, and yes, there is laughter. And if we can just throw it out there right now, is I think one of the first quick questions that any widow has is if I'm ever going to be happy again, and will I ever be able to smile? And the answer is yes, you will. It's different, but yes, you will get through it all. But for me, I say my husband died unexpectedly from suicide because we did not go through any depression that I knew of, or mental illness that I knew of, or we knew of. We were this happy-go-lucky family. I mean, the Three Musketeers, and traveling the world and doing just exciting, beautiful things. And there couldn't be more love if you ask for it. And,
I've seen those beautiful pictures on your Facebook page
of
the three of you together. And it is true. It's just, where in the world is Susan Spalding?
Where's Waldo?
Not where's Waldo.
But it was
Carmen Diego. What is the other one?
Yeah, right. With Dora. But,
Dora the Explorer.
I mean, our life was just beautiful. And that's what I lean on. Actually, I want to correct that. And I've done that lately, is I don't want to say I had a beautiful life, because I feel I have a beautiful life. And it took a while to be able, it took since 2010 to actually be able to say that. But I was fortunate to have what I had when I had it. And many people don't have that opportunity. But for me, going back to the story, it was an unexpected loss. It was, I knew that Steve was upset. There was stress from work. And I assumed we were dealing with that. And just out of the blue, his mom was staying with us at our house. My son was home. Of course, he was, just 13. And I heard this sound, this really loud sound. And I thought that this marble from a bathroom we were remodeling had, the facade had fallen down. It was just that loud. And I ran into the bathroom, and it was still there. And then I looked across the hall, and I could just see this fog in the air. And I won't go into any more details with that, but Steve had taken his life. And what is an extra added layer to so many people who have lost someone to suicide, especially when it is at their home, is that the police come and you're a suspect. And so it's not, the police aren't there. They're there to help, but for those first few moments, you're a suspect, and you can't blame them. I mean, there's like a SWAT team, descending upon your home, and
I never thought of that.
it's another layer. So you get this, there's sights and sounds and all these things that sometimes can trigger a remembrance of it. It's post-traumatic stress, for sure.
Yes. Yeah, we had the police and all of the responders at my house, because I found John, and there was that moment where the questions were going in a really weird direction, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, and at that point, my biggest concern at that moment, of course, I had my mother-in-law who had heart problems. I wanted to make sure she was okay, and I was, God was there, because I heard my son running down the hall, and I was able to come out with my arms out to stop him from running past me and scoop him forward. And my neighbors were home. He stayed with them. And there's all these little things that when you look at them, they're blessings. And it's so hard to tell someone who's just been widowed that there's blessings everywhere. But there are. You just have to sometimes look a little bit harder. But it took a while. I was fortunate that Steve had a beautiful group of friends called the Buds. They've been friends some of them since grammar school.
How many?
Oh my gosh, there has to be like 15, 20.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah. And these Buds, we were back in the States actually, in his hometown. So it was where he grew up, where he passed away. And they took over. They took care of the funeral. They took care of all those little things that so many people have to take care of themselves, where I could just focus on AJ and myself. So I was very, very blessed. And to this day, they are a blessing. I think one of the things that people, no matter how you become a widow, other people are afraid to talk to you about your spouse because they don't want to make you sad, or if you look like you're having a great day, they don't want to bring you down.
I think a really good point too is we don't forget them.
No,
they're always kind of on our minds.
So no, there,
don't think I'm not going to bring them up because then they won't know. We're always
always right. And so I think we love to have their names said. We love to have stories shared, and I know that's been a big healing thing for my son, is hearing stories from these guys that my husband grew up with, and some of those stories I wish he didn't know, but it's all part of it. And they have all really just circled the wagons and have been there for AJ. They're all his uncles, and some in particular have just nonstop been there for AJ.
I find that really incredible for many reasons, but also that a group of guys swooped in and took over. Usually it's the moms, it's the aunts, it's the grandmas, it's the sisters, and stuff.
It's the Buds.
It's the Buds.
Yeah.
How can you tell me a little bit about the service? How soon after did you have the service?
Yep.
And,
well, I did everything that you shouldn't do, probably. I was in California at the time, so within a month I had moved. I didn't want to be in the house. I wanted to be. My brother lives here in Minnesota. He was a captain with Delta, so he was based here. And my mother lived here. She also migrated here with my father, who unfortunately went from the airport to the Waconia Hospital and passed away there. But I moved here in 2010. And our service then was probably about 2 to 3 weeks after we lost Steve. It was a memorial service.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And a lot of people attended, I bet.
It was humbling. Yes.
With everything that you were going through, Susan Spalding is my guest on A Widow's Heart. You said that the Buds came in and they kind of helped plan the service and stuff, and they lost a friend, and how hard was that? But how did you memorialize Steve?
Yes, well, actually, he was cremated, and when we had the service, and again, the service was put on by the Buds, and AJ, when we moved back to the States, AJ went to the same school that my husband went to, which was Our Lady of Mercy. And the church and the school helped out tremendously as well. So I do want to acknowledge that, because that was also a blessing. But Steve, I didn't speak at Steve's memorial. I couldn't at that moment.
Yeah.
But the Buds did, and it was at a Catholic church, and we had these beautiful, huge posters of Steve on easels that were there, with him sailing, which he absolutely loved, and playing golf, which he absolutely loved. I think the most important part was that the priest just embraced Steve and the life that he lived. And I might say that it was also our priest that came to speak with me prior to that, assured me that Steve was in heaven, and just God welcomes him with open arms. And as a matter of fact, I think it's important to note that one of the first things, it was the first day when I went to pick up AJ, he was at a friend's house that day just to be with youth rather than everything that we were dealing with at the house. And when I went to pick him up, he came and he sat on right next to me, and he said, "Mom, is Dad going to go to heaven?" And I said, "Absolutely, he will.
Yeah.
He's Irish. He gets a pass."
But see, you can laugh.
Yeah, you can laugh. But, I think that was Steve just speaking through me at that time, for sure.
For sure. Oh, my goodness. Susan Spalding, my guest on A Widow's Heart. And we're going to take just a quick break. And what I found when I talk about Wings for Widows, that all my guests are like, "Oh, I was there. I know what it's like to just be a little bit worried about your finances and stuff." So wingsforwidows.org. They have a brand new Facebook page now, too. I spoke with Chris Bentley, the CEO, just yesterday, and they offer financial counseling without any expectations. I mean, they're not trying to get your money to invest with them or whatever, but they're all Christian. There are 80, I found out, counselors with Wings for Widows all around the nation. And they come alongside widows and widowers. He said that we got a misnomer with that situation with the name of the organization, because we help widowers and widows wherever they are. Maybe it's you have no money and it's helping through bankruptcy or other situations. So I just want to say thank you to Wings for Widows for supporting. And how were you after Steve's death with finances? Were you just a little bit overwhelmed? And
of course I was overwhelmed, and in the end everything worked out quite well as far as the organization of it all. But I think, like many new widows, you feel like you're going to be living underneath an overpass, and having a child, or I only had one. There's many widows who have multiple children, on how we're going to do college and how we're going to just survive.
Yeah.
But for the first bit, it was difficult, but everything was organized, and that's something that Steve did. He was very organized with finances. I don't like numbers, and I never really paid attention to them. But
I know.
I do want
not my gifting either.
I do want to you mentioned Wings for Widows and how kind of what a small world it is, because Chris Bentley went to the Naval Academy with my brother.
Oh, no, really?
Yep. And they're great friends. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I always say it's 3 degrees of separation.
Right?
It's not 6 degrees of separation.
Right.
And Susan lost her husband to suicide, and you've become quite a voice for that community, because again, there is like this weird stigma. And as you were talking about at his service, there are still many who believe in the old belief that if that happens, that person, that soul doesn't go to heaven.
Yeah.
We know better. So many people know better.
Yeah.
How do you address that?
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up, because I think to start with, I think how we address the verbiage that we use to say commit suicide is become rather passé for many reasons. And one of them is because suicide is not a crime and it's not a sin. I think if we start changing the verbiage, it can start having a different take on that it is an illness. Like any other kind of illness in many cases. I think the way we speak about it can help change how we think about it.
Yeah. I think also you probably have had to deal with some not well-meaning people. I mean, well-meaning people is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
But their questions are a little bit different than another widow would get.
100%.
Do you have any examples of that?
I mean, and
I really felt myself tiptoeing there too. I felt like one of those people.
Don't tiptoe. But that is something that when in my support group, which we call our special friends, it's a very common thing to hear. I mean, you'll get questions like, was your marriage, did you have a problem in your marriage? Did you have a problem with your finances? What are some of the other ones? Gosh, I'm having a blank now that I'm, I'm on a run. But, I mean, there's some, how did he do it? I mean, there's just really some awful intrusive questions. But I think some of the most hurtful ones are questioning how our relationship was. You wouldn't ask that to somebody who had a heart attack or somebody who had cancer. You don't ask those questions, and I don't know why we feel that it's okay to ask someone who's lost someone to suicide those questions.
Yeah. Well, how did you come to Widomite first? Yeah. I want to hear about that. And then you branched out, or was it in tandem with the suicide support group?
Widomite came first. And funny as, well, actually, you know what came first was Camp Aaron. And it was one of the Bud's wives who told me about Camp Aaron. And
Tell me about Camp Aaron.
Right. So Camp Aaron is a grief camp for kids. Oh. And they mix regular camp activities with grief work as well. And the most important thing is that these children have an opportunity to know that they're not alone, that there's multiple children that are going through the same thing that they're going through, much like going to a support group for adults. But this is just a really important connection for those. It's a community for these.
Where is it at?
So it used to be up in Hinckley.
Hinckley, Minnesota.
Yes, it used to be. Camp Aaron was run through Fairview Youth Grief Services, and now it's run through Brighter Days. And so they have one that is local in Eden Prairie, and the other one, I can't think of the other name of the camp. That it was the first time we had it, just this last September. But it's not as far as Hinckley, so that was really a pleasure.
Yes. And it's Camp ERIN, Camp Aaron.
Yes, Camp Aaron.
Yeah.
So I was told about Camp Aaron, and I looked it up online, and I got in touch with Jenny Simmons at Fairview Youth Grief Services, and as luck would have it, there was not a camp until summer. However, there was a support group that for the parents or the caregivers, I should say, and for the children. And they're divided into age groups, so they're in appropriate group settings, as grief is so different at every age.
Yeah.
And it was through that I met Renee Hemke, who was doing Soaring Spirits. And I went to one of those meetings and met Susan Burke, who is also with Wings for Widows now. Mm-hmm. And Susan and Renee invited me to go to a Novembering, which was right across the street here at
University of Northwestern, St. Paul.
Yes. So I was very moved by that. It was in the evening back then. Yeah. And I was very moved by that dinner and the whole candle lighting and the rose and just the camaraderie, the community, that I started going to the events. And it was David.
David Thielman.
Yes.
Episode 1, if you'd like to learn more. He was my guest. Yeah.
What an earth angel. Yeah. Just a wonderful man. And he asked me if I would like to start a Widow Connect group in the West Metro area. And I was nervous about it because, like, what could I do? I'm still kind of going through it. Mm-hmm. And I prayed about it, and I said yes. And it's funny what if you have quiet time with God and you listen, you say yes to things that catapult you forward. And it was that got me started with West Metro.
What's the God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
I love that.
Is that right?
Yes, I love that.
I'm slightly dyslexic, a little ADHD in there, but I think I got it right.
Right, you did. But it was a beautiful offering which has turned into a sisterhood, I can really say, of their sisterhood. The ladies in that group are beautiful and they're inspiring.
And we're talking with Susan Spalding, my guest here on A Widow's Heart, and I see you as a shepherd. And you've got all of these beautiful little sheep, all ages and shapes and sizes and stuff, and you care about and you keep track of every one.
I love them all. I'm so protective over all of them.
Yeah.
But it was, and my West Metro group started small, as you know. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was just me, and I would utilize that time to it was at Wooddale Church, so if nobody was showing up, I'd go to the prayer wall and spend some time there. And then sometimes it would just be one person. And I would always feel that it was God's intention for me to be with that one person at that time.
Right.
And then Jeannie, my co-facilitator, came, and she's been, what a blessing she is to me.
Jeannie swore out.
Yeah,
shout out. Swore out.
Right. But it was through the West Metro Widow Connect and Widow Might that put on a kind of an intensive weekend retreat, if you will, at Brighter Days to help support us with the groups. And it was through that I met Carolyn Kinzel from Brighter Days.
Yes.
And
I've got to book her for a podcast.
Oh, she's fabulous. So, another Earth Angel.
Yeah, and just want to jump in for a moment. Brighter Days Grief Center, correct?
Yes, Family Grief Center in Eden Prairie.
We're going to have to get links for all of these things that you are mentioning here, because all of them are so amazing. So anyway, carry on. Yeah.
So it was after going through that after I met Carolyn and we had conversation, we went through that intensive, that she asked if I would like to start a focus group with those left behind by suicide. And again, I was very nervous about it, but said yes. And that has grown now to be another wonderful group. I am, again, very protective over those ladies, and yet I am so incredibly inspired by them.
Can I ask how many are in your grief group?
We have about 20 now.
20.
Yep.
Wow.
One has moved to Texas, and one of the gals, Betsy, she splits her time between here and North Carolina, and she has blossomed. She's written a book about losing her husband to suicide. He was a physician, and
oh my goodness,
the rates of physician suicide are astounding. I was awakened to that by Betsy, but she is now speaking about it as well. And just to see these women blossom in both my groups is just so rewarding. And it was Brene Brown who said, someday your story, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, your story will somehow be someone else's survival guide.
Yes.
And by being vulnerable and sharing, we can sure help others.
Standing next to my husband's casket, the same thing happened to me. And I don't know about you, but my reaction was, what? I'd rather have my husband back, healed and whole, not the way he was. But, and then it wasn't, a year, 2 years later, I started working at KTIS on the morning show, and widows started calling me. That's how we got the sounding board for the start of Widow Might. And for our dear listeners, widowmight.org, just a refresher for more information, great resources. And since the pandemic, we've been doing Zooms and getting widows from all over the nation. I mean, it's been incredible.
Yes.
And just a group just started in Mesa, Arizona?
In Mesa, Arizona, yes. They're actually starting today.
Is it really today?
Yeah.
And if you are listening, that is Wednesday, April 5th.
Yes, Kathy and Diane, we're sending prayers.
We'll be praying for you guys. Yeah,
Yes.
that's for sure. And then your Special Friends, which is the suicide support group. What do you find is the best way to come alongside one, whether it's a widow or a widower who is grieving?
Yeah, I think I will reiterate what I said earlier, is that, a lot of times it's not giving advice, although I always have pearls of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you do.
But it
like
is,
drops of the morning dew.
Right. Oh, my goodness. But just to be there. To be that hand on your shoulder, or the hand. Thank goodness after COVID we can have that physical contact again. But to be that ear to listen listen and not always have to respond, and to have the heart to understand, and have faith that it is all going to, it will get better. It's different. And maybe I don't want to say it gets better. You will move forward. There is so much that we're meant to do on this earth, and to be vulnerable and have the courage to share your story, because you can help somebody by doing that.
And I have just seen, God's hand just, reaching down from heaven and just working through the groups you're involved with, to the groups I'm involved with. I know that people are listening all over the nation. I went to Maryland in the first weekend in March, Widow Journey with Gail Roper.
Yes.
And met just a bunch of people. And my first reaction, when I walk into these groups, it's like, this is amazing. It's growing. Look at all these beautiful women. And then my heart stops a moment, because for each of these women, there is a husband in heaven.
Yes.
But I was just thinking recently, you and I know of this one young widow who is at her wit's end, who just passed away a few months ago. She reached out to me, and I'm like, I can do this much, but I'm going to call Susan, and it's like this sacred network,
it is.
And we just were able to surround her and hopefully continue to walk with her on her journey into the future.
And isn't that the beauty of it all? I mean, I hear so many of the ladies in my group say, I was just talking with someone and told them about the group. And it's just this word of mouth, and just having the courage to share can bring such hope to somebody else.
Yeah. And we're talking with Susan Spalding. I'm Pam Lundell, your host of A Widow's Heart. I guess my question has been answered. I was just going to say, and how has God been working in your life lately? What are some of the little, maybe God winks that you've been seeing from him? Yeah,
I get a lot of God winks. I have been, I see a lot of different signs, starting from way back when I didn't know what I was going to be doing. When AJ turned 16, we took a trip to Boston. It was something his father had always promised him to do, to go to a Boston Red Sox game, and so I did that. And I was on one of those duck boats, those silly duck boats, which the kids love, and I was like, okay.
They're like wheels on land, and then they turn into an amphibious vehicle.
So we had just plunged into to the river, and I looked up at this building, and it said, "Spalding, find your strength." And it was just a whole banner down the side of it. It was a hospital, and it said, "Spalding, find your strength."
I don't even know Steve, but I can just hear his voice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. So it's like, okay, I will. I mean, now I forgot the question that you asked me.
I was just talking about, how God
signs.
has shown up,
Yes.
since then. And really just, I always say, when I found John, it was just like lifted me up by my armpits, and, and then day by day, it did get better.
Yeah.
It's moving forward, not really moving. You're moving on, but also moving forward.
Yeah. And I think it is through God and through crisis that we find, our strength, and we find our superpower, if you will, and it kind of molds us to who we really are. Yeah. And I want to remind all the widows out there that remember that superpower that got you to where you are. And after the dust settles, so to speak, sometimes you forget that you are strong and you are capable because you miss your significant other so very much. But just remember that. You're strong.
We are in, as we're sitting here talking, we are in the Easter season, and I'm just wondering how you are going to be celebrating Easter.
Well, I will be celebrating Easter with my beautiful mother, my 91-year-old mother.
Oh, she's amazing.
Jerry. Yeah, shout out to Jerry. And she's also such an avatar for me. She is just an amazing role model.
I love Avatar. That's the greatest.
Yeah, right? So I will have my mother over. My brother's flying up from Cartagena, so he will be here. And we'll go to Mass, and then we'll have Easter brunch at my place. And as always, I love to color Easter eggs, so we will do that.
Oh, fun.
And I yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I've made the transition too from Easter Sunday to Resurrection Sunday because it just
I
means
love that.
so much more to me. And while we were talking, Susan, I don't know if I've told you about this or not, but Randy Alcorn has written a book called Heaven years ago, big fat book. And that was next to my Bible after John passed away because I knew my husband was in heaven, but I just wanted to know what was going on. And it's biblically based, of course, and it just talks about heaven, and what's going on, and we're going to have jobs and things like that. Then in the very beginning on one of the leaflets, I found this poem, which I love, and this is perfect for the Easter season or any time, by a writer named Calvin Miller. And Randy Alcorn shared this in the beginning of the book. I once scorned every fearful thought of death when it was but the end of pulse and breath. But now my eyes have seen that past the pain, there is a world that's waiting to be claimed. Earthmaker, holy, let me now depart. For living is such a temporary art, and dying is but getting dressed for God. Our graves are merely doorways cut in sod.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that incredible?
That is really beautiful.
Can't even get through it without crying.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think of, is it Elevation Worship? I hope I've got that one right. They are going to be in concert here in the Twin Cities in the month of April at Target Center. And they sing that beautiful song called Graves into Gardens. And that's the hope that we have, too. And it is real and it's tangible. What encouragement do you have for someone who may be going through the same thing, and maybe they've got the stigma of suicide, and it's like, I can't talk to anybody, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And along with that, the grief, as you've mentioned.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Reach out to me, if you can, through Brighter Days. But I think it's just really important to know that you're not alone, and that there are others. There's me. There's so many others out there that can help you, and by having the courage to pick up the phone or to send an email and to reach out and share your story with somebody who knows is truly important. And I think I would love to see more suicide support groups pop up around the country, the world, so to speak, because they're needed. Because it is a little bit different. Go to any grief support that you can, but if there's one specific to loss by suicide, it's totally a wonderful thing to do, and. Don't be afraid to ask for help through a counselor, through therapy, through a life coach, whatever that looks like for you, because I think the stigma of asking for help is what gets a lot of people into hot water, so to speak.
It's really good advice. It is. Okay, so how can people, I want to be respectful to you too, can people contact you for more information?
Through Brighter Days Family Grief Center.
Okay. And do you know their website at all?
I do. It's brighterdaysgriefcenter.org.
Okay, brighterdaysgriefcenter.org. Of course, we've been talking about Widow Might, MIGHT.org. There are some great resources there. And then Camp Erin, ERIN, is the grief camp for kids, which is through Brighter Days, correct?
Yes, and there's one coming up on June 17th, I believe.
Wonderful.
Yes.
And I know that with Widow Might, widowmight.org, you can check out those Widow Connect groups, and no matter where you're listening, you can probably join one.
Yes.
Very
absolutely.
soon.
Yes, absolutely.
So reach out. We love you. I love you, Susan Spalding. Any advice you can give someone who's new to the grief journey on how to get through day by day?
I'd love to share about gratitude, and that might seem like a really tough thing for a new widow to experience or to think about. But before you go to bed, or when you wake up in the morning, or both of those times, think of one thing or three things, build up to 5 things that you're grateful for. There's always something to be grateful for, and gratitude can change the trajectory of your day.
Amen.
Thank you for having me and letting me share my story.
Absolutely. A Widow's Heart is grateful for the support of Wings for Widows and is part of the Wow God Podcast Network. You'll find it wherever you get your podcasts and at wowgod.com.